When a woman realizes that a man who once prioritized her is no longer showing the same level of interest, her very first reaction is almost always shock. It's as if the ground beneath her feet shifts, and for a brief moment, she cannot fully comprehend what's happening. This is not just about losing attention, it's about losing a sense of control that she may have unconsciously or consciously held throughout the relationship. In the beginning, when everything was going well, she felt secure knowing that she was at the center of your world. She was used to your consistent texts, your calls, your eagerness to make plans, and your willingness to prioritize her above almost everything else. This consistency gave her a sense of power, a reassurance that she had your devotion. But when that pattern changes, when you stop reacting the same way, stop chasing, stop pouring as much energy into the dynamic, the first thing she feels is confusion mixed with panic. For many women, attention is not just about love or care, it's about validation. When you were interested, she felt valuable, attractive, and desired. That validation became part of her identity. So when she notices that you are no longer giving her the same energy, it feels like a direct hit to her self-worth. She starts to wonder what happened. What changed? Why is he pulling away? This sudden loss of control can be deeply unsettling. Even if she never admitted to herself how much she relied on your interest to feel secure. The shock she experiences in this moment is often emotional and physical. You might notice subtle changes. She might become quieter, more watchful, or even overly cheerful in an attempt to mask her unease. Inside, however, her mind is racing. The initial disbelief is powerful. She may even try to convince herself that she's imagining it. She'll think, maybe he's just busy. Maybe he's having a bad week. Denial becomes her first defense mechanism because accepting the truth that your interest has genuinely faded is too painful in the beginning. This reaction is not always visible at first. Many women hide their shock because they don't want to give away their vulnerability. She may still smile, still engage in conversations, still act as though nothing has changed. But internally, she is scanning for clues, desperately trying to piece together what went wrong. Her pride won't let her immediately confront you, but her instincts are telling her that something is different. The shock intensifies when she realizes that she can no longer predict your behavior. In the past, she knew exactly how you would respond to her texts or gestures. If she reached out, you would reply quickly. If she asked for something, you would deliver. But now there's a pause, a hesitation, or perhaps no response at all. This unpredictability feels foreign and threatening. It shakes her confidence because she no longer knows where she stands with you. This loss of control often triggers a deep fear of rejection. For many women, rejection isn't just about losing a relationship. It's about what that rejection symbolizes. It challenges her belief in her own desirability and her place in your life. This is why her initial reaction is so intense. It's not only about you withdrawing, it's about everything that withdrawal represents to her ego and her identity. In some cases, the shock might manifest as silence. She may pull back slightly, watching and waiting to see if you will notice her distance and chase her again. In other cases, she might suddenly become overly affectionate or clingy, desperately trying to restore the dynamic to how it once was. Either way, these are instinctive responses driven by her need to regain that lost sense of control. What many men fail to realize is that this initial stage of shock sets the tone for everything that follows. The way she processes these first moments, whether she hides her panic, confronts you directly, or pretends she doesn't care, reveals a lot about her personality and her intentions. Some women will handle it with grace, accepting the change and respecting your space. Others, however, will spiral into a pattern of manipulation, drama, and emotional games to pull you back in. The sudden shock of losing control is powerful because it disrupts her internal balance. It forces her to confront a painful truth. She no longer has the same hold over you. For some women, this realization sparks genuine self-reflection and growth. For others, triggers defensiveness and destructive behaviors aimed at regaining what was lost. At this stage, everything is raw and unfiltered. She is caught between denial and acceptance, fear and pride. And while she may not show it outwardly, internally she is grappling with a single haunting question. What if I've lost him for good? After the initial shock fades and she begins to grasp that something has truly shifted, the next phase she enters is confusion. This confusion can be overwhelming, consuming her thoughts day and night. In this stage, she becomes deeply introspective, replaying every interaction, every conversation, every small detail in her mind as she desperately tries to figure out when and why your interest started to fade. This is a very vulnerable stage for her because confusion creates a deep sense of instability. When everything once felt predictable, your texts, your tone of voice, the way you looked at her, she felt secure. She had a sense of certainty about her place in your life. But now, the rules have changed without warning, and she is left scrambling to understand what went wrong. That lack of clarity eats away at her peace of mind. Her thoughts become relentless and obsessive. She may stay up late at night replaying past moments, overanalyzing things you said weeks or even months ago. She'll think, was it something I said? Did I push him away without realizing it? Did I do something to make him lose interest? These questions circle in her mind endlessly. The lack of answers drives her deeper into this mental spiral. Overthinking becomes her coping mechanism because she believes that if she can just figure out the exact moment when things started to change, she will be able to fix it. In reality, this overthinking rarely brings clarity. It only magnifies her anxiety. She starts to interpret every word, every text message, every silence as a hidden clue. If you take longer to reply than usual, she sees it as a sign that you're upset or pulling away even further. If you seem distracted or distant during a conversation, she assumes you're thinking about someone else or planning to leave her. This confusion often spills over into her behavior. She may begin acting differently without even realizing it. Sometimes she'll try to be extra cheerful and attentive, hoping to win back your affection. Other times, she may withdraw completely, giving you the cold shoulder to see if you'll chase her. These mixed signals aren't intentional. They are a reflection of the storm of emotions raging inside her. She's torn between fighting for your attention and protecting her pride. One of the most common patterns during this stage is her tendency to blame herself entirely. Instead of seeing the situation objectively, she turns inward and begins to doubt her own worth. She might think, maybe I'm not pretty enough. Maybe I'm boring. Maybe he found someone better. This self-blame can lead to changes in her appearance or habits. She might start dressing differently, wearing more makeup, or even altering her personality slightly in an effort to become the version of herself she thinks you want. But confusion doesn't always express itself through self-blame. In some women, it manifests as frustration and defensiveness. If she cannot pinpoint what went wrong, she may begin to suspect that you are deliberately hiding something from her. This is when trust begins to erode. She might start checking your social media more often, questioning your whereabouts, or reading into every interaction you have with other people. Her mind is searching for evidence to explain the change, and in the absence of clear answers, she fills in the gaps with her own fears and assumptions. What makes this stage especially difficult is that confusion is exhausting. It's not just emotional fatigue, it's mental and physical as well. Her sleep may be disrupted, her mood may swing unpredictably, and her energy levels may plummet. Even during her daily routines, her mind is preoccupied with thoughts of you and the relationship. It becomes hard for her to focus on work, friends, or personal goals because this uncertainty overshadows everything else. As her confusion deepens, so does her desperation for clarity. She might begin to subtly test you, asking indirect questions or creating scenarios to gauge your reaction. For example, she may casually mention another man to see if you get jealous, or she might forget to reply to your message to see how long it takes you to notice. These tactics are her way of seeking answers without having to directly confront the issue, but they often backfire, creating even more tension between you. The core of this stage is simple. She cannot stand not knowing the truth. Confusion breeds anxiety, and anxiety drives overthinking. The more she analyzes, the less she understands, and the less she understands, the more unstable she feels. It becomes a vicious cycle that can quickly spiral out of control. For you, this stage may feel like she's acting erratic or unpredictable, but in reality, she's simply reacting to uncertainty. She's caught between hope and fear, hoping that she's wrong about your lack of interest, but fearing that she's right. This inner tug of war shapes everything she does and says during this period. Ultimately, this confusion sets the stage for what comes next, when she can no longer tolerate the endless questions swirling in her mind. She shifts from passive overthinking to active pursuit. This is when she begins trying to pull you back in, not just to regain your attention, but to reclaim the stability she feels slipping away. After the shock has worn off and the confusion has reached its peak, a woman often transitions into a phase of action. This is the point where she is no longer content, just wondering and worrying about what went wrong. She begins to actively try to regain your interest. Her mindset shifts from passive overthinking to a more strategic, sometimes even manipulative approach. Deep down, she feels that if she can just make you feel the way you once did, she can restore the balance of the relationship and erase the painful uncertainty she's been feeling. At this stage, you'll notice subtle and sometimes very obvious changes in her behavior. One of the most common tactics she'll use is increased affection and attentiveness. She may suddenly become more loving, more complimentary, and more physically affectionate than before. She might start initiating conversations or physical touch more often, sending sweet texts throughout the day, or surprising you with gestures that she hadn't done in a while. These actions are deliberate attempts to draw you back in by reminding you of how things were at the beginning. It's her way of saying, "Look at me. Don't forget how good we are together." Another strategy she might employ is improving her appearance. When a woman senses that a man's interest is fading, she may instinctively put extra effort into how she looks. Suddenly, she's dressing differently, trying new hairstyles, or posting carefully curated photos on social media. This isn't always just for herself. It's a calculated move to grab your attention and reignite your attraction. By looking her best, she hopes to remind you of the excitement and desire you once felt for her, but her attempts aren't always positive or straightforward. Sometimes they can be indirect and manipulative. For instance, she might start playing emotional games, such as making herself seem busier than usual to create a sense of scarcity. If she feels you're pulling away, she might deliberately delay her responses to your messages or cancel plans at the last minute, hoping to make you wonder about her availability. The goal is to trigger your curiosity and maybe even jealousy, pushing you to chase her again. One of the most powerful tools she may use in this stage is social media. Many women understand the psychological effect of posting specific content where you're certain to see it. She might start sharing photos of herself looking stunning, having fun with friends, or subtly hinting at male attention. These posts are carefully designed to get a reaction out of you, to make you miss her, wonder about her, or even feel a pang of jealousy. It's her silent way of saying, "Look at what you're missing." Another tactic she might employ is direct communication, disguised as casual conversation. Instead of confronting you outright, she'll start asking indirect questions meant to gauge your feelings. For example, she might casually bring up relationships or ask about your plans for the future to see how you respond. These conversations are like emotional fishing lines. She's casting them out, hoping to catch some clue about where you truly stand. During this stage, you may also notice her suddenly becoming more supportive or accommodating. She might start agreeing with you more often, letting go of past arguments, or doing things she knows you appreciate. This isn't necessarily a sign of genuine change. It's a calculated effort to show you the best version of herself, hoping you'll fall back in love with her or at least become more invested again. For some women, these attempts can escalate into desperation. If her subtle tactics don't seem to work, she may resort to more extreme behaviors, making dramatic declarations of love or hinting at ultimatums. In certain cases, she might even create crisis or emotional chaos to force you into responding. This could include fabricated emergencies, exaggerated stories, or even picking fights just to provoke a passionate reaction from you. It may sound irrational, but to her, even a negative emotional response feels better than being ignored. It's important to understand that these actions aren't always malicious. In many cases, they stem from fear and insecurity rather than manipulation. She's scared of losing you, and she's willing to do whatever it takes to stop that from happening. However, when fear drives her behavior, it can create a toxic dynamic where she's constantly chasing and you're constantly retreating. Interestingly, her attempts to reignite your interest aren't just about getting you back. They're also about restoring her own self-image. When your attention fades, it feels like a blow to her ego. By successfully winning you back, even temporarily, she proves to herself that she's still desirable, still in control, and still capable of influencing your emotions. However, this stage is also a critical turning point. If you respond to her efforts, even slightly, it can reinforce her belief that these tactics work. This can lead to a cycle where she repeatedly uses the same strategies to keep you engaged, creating a relationship based on emotional highs and lows rather than genuine connection. On the other hand, if you remain distant or unresponsive, her attempts may intensify before they eventually collapse into frustration or anger. Either way, this is the moment where her true character starts to reveal itself. Whether she can handle rejection with grace or whether she will spiral into more toxic behaviors to regain control. At its core, this stage is about power and fear. She's fighting to regain the power she feels slipping away while battling the fear of losing you completely. This internal conflict drives her every move, and depending on how you respond, it can either calm her insecurities or fan the flames of chaos. When all her subtle and direct attempts to reignite your interest fail, she often escalates to a more intense and manipulative stage. This is where her actions shift from merely trying to win you back to controlling your emotions. At this point, her fear of losing you completely takes over, and she starts using guilt, shame, and emotional pressure as tools to keep you tethered to her, even if your feelings have clearly faded. This stage is not always easy to recognize because emotional manipulation can be subtle and calculated. It often starts small. A few carefully chosen words, a sigh, a well-timed silence. She might say something like, "You've changed, you don't care about me like you used to," or "I guess I just don't matter to you anymore." On the surface, these words seem innocent or even vulnerable, but beneath them lies a clear intention to make you feel responsible for her pain. When a woman senses she's losing her grip, guilt becomes one of her strongest weapons. By making you feel like the bad guy, she creates a dynamic where you are constantly questioning yourself. You start to wonder if you've been unfair, neglectful, or even cruel. This self-doubt makes you more likely to stay, even if deep down you know the relationship is no longer healthy or fulfilling. Another common tactic during this stage is playing the victim. She will frame herself as the one who has been wronged, emphasizing how much she has sacrificed or endured for the sake of the relationship. She might remind you of the times she stood by you, supported you, or forgave your mistakes. Her goal is to make you feel indebted to her so that walking away feels like a betrayal. For example, she might say things like, "After everything I've done for you, this is how you treat me. I gave you my whole heart, and you're just going to leave me like I never mattered. I guess I was just a fool to believe in us. These statements are carefully designed to trigger your empathy and sense of obligation. Even if you were ready to move on, the weight of her words can make you hesitate, creating a sense of moral conflict inside you. At times, she may also resort to emotional outbursts. These can range from tears and breakdowns to anger and rage. By overwhelming you with intense emotions, she keeps you on the defensive. You may find yourself constantly trying to calm her down, explain yourself, or avoid conflict. This keeps the focus off her behavior and places the responsibility squarely on your shoulders. It's a way of controlling the dynamic without appearing overtly manipulative. Some women take this even further by using fear as leverage. They may hint at self-destructive behaviors such as, "I don't know what I'll do if you leave me," or "I can't live without you." These statements are deeply manipulative because they place you in a position where you feel like abandoning her would cause harm. Even if you know logically that her words are exaggerated or untrue, the emotional burden can be heavy enough to keep you stuck in the relationship out of guilt and fear. Social media often becomes a stage for these manipulative tactics as well. She might post cryptic quotes about heartbreak, loneliness, or betrayal, knowing that you'll see them and feel a pang of responsibility. Sometimes she'll even share exaggerated stories with friends or followers to create a narrative where you are the villain. This public display of pain and victimhood adds another layer of pressure, making it harder for you to step away without looking like the bad guy to others. What makes this phase so difficult is that manipulation isn't always obvious. It can feel like genuine emotion, especially if you care about her. You might tell yourself, "She's just hurt," or "Maybe I really have been neglecting her." But if you step back, you'll notice a pattern. Her behaviors are not aimed at resolving the underlying issues. They are aimed at keeping you emotionally trapped. During this stage, you may also notice a shift in how she frames the past. She'll rewrite history in a way that suits her narrative. For instance, she might downplay her own mistakes while exaggerating yours. This selective memory serves to reinforce her position as the wronged party and deepen your feelings of guilt. Over time, you might start to question your own recollection of events, a psychological tactic known as gaslighting. The most dangerous part of this stage is how draining it can be. Constant guilt, tripping, and emotional manipulation leave you feeling exhausted, confused, and even resentful. You may start to feel like no matter what you do, it's never enough. This emotional fatigue can keep you paralyzed, unsure whether to stay and keep trying or finally walk away. For her, however, this stage is about self-preservation. She's terrified of losing the validation and security that your presence provides. By manipulating your emotions, she believes she can delay or prevent the inevitable. But instead of addressing her fears honestly, she masks them with drama, blame, and control. In the end, this stage is a test, not just of your patience, but of your ability to see through the emotional fog. If you give in to her guilt tactics, you reinforce her behavior, making it harder to break free later. If you stand firm, she may escalate temporarily, but eventually she'll be forced to confront the reality she's been trying to avoid, that she can't control someone who has already decided to let go. When her manipulation, guilt, tripping, and emotional tactics no longer yield the results she desires, a major shift occurs. Anger begins to take center stage. At this point, she has exhausted every subtle and indirect strategy to reignite your interest or hold on to your attention, and now she feels cornered, exposed, and powerless. For many women, this stage can be the most volatile because it comes from a place of deep hurt, rejection, and wounded pride. In the earlier stages, her actions were driven by fear. Fear of losing you, fear of being replaced, fear of confronting the truth that your feelings have changed. But when fear no longer works, it often transforms into rage. This anger isn't just about you, it's about everything your withdrawal represents. When a woman realizes that she no longer has influence over someone she once controlled emotionally, it strikes at the core of her identity. She feels invalidated, and that loss of power can trigger explosive emotions. The first signs of this anger may appear subtle. She might start using sharper tones in conversations, making snide remarks, or giving you the silent treatment. Passive-aggressive behavior often precedes open confrontation. For instance, she may act cold or distant without explanation, hoping you'll ask what's wrong. When you do, she'll release her pent-up frustrations, often in an accusatory or dramatic way. Her words during this stage can cut deeply. She may hurl accusations like, "You've been lying to me all along. I knew you were never serious about me. You wasted my time and played with my feelings." These statements are fueled by a combination of hurt and pride. She's not just angry about your lack of interest. She's angry because, in her eyes, she allowed herself to be vulnerable and now feels humiliated. This anger often comes with a desire to regain control through confrontation. She wants you to feel guilty, ashamed, or even fearful of her reaction, so that once again the emotional balance tilts in her favor. In many cases, her anger may manifest in destructive behavior. Some women will lash out in ways designed to hurt you emotionally or socially. This might include spreading rumors, exposing private conversations, or twisting the story to make you appear as the villain to mutual friends, family members, or on social media. By painting herself as the innocent victim and you as the heartless betrayer, she not only seeks validation, but also attempts to tarnish your reputation. For example, she might post cryptic quotes online about betrayal and heartbreak, fully aware that people will speculate about who she's referring to. Or she could publicly hint at secrets you shared in confidence, using them as weapons to gain sympathy and make you regret distancing yourself. These actions aren't just impulsive, they're calculated moves born from resentment. Jealousy also plays a major role during this phase. If she suspects or knows there's another woman in the picture, her anger can intensify dramatically. The idea of being replaced is almost unbearable to her ego. In such cases, she may attack not just you but also the other woman, either directly or indirectly. She might attempt to sabotage that relationship through gossip, confrontation, or emotional manipulation, driven by the belief that if she can't have you, no one else should either. Some women will even use revenge tactics to regain a sense of power. This can range from petty actions, like returning your belongings in a dramatic or destructive way, to more serious behaviors, such as trying to harm your career, friendships, or opportunities. At this point, her focus is less about rekindling the relationship and more about punishing you for making her feel disposable. One of the most telling aspects of this stage is the emotional intensity she brings to every interaction. She may alternate between tears and fury, vulnerability and aggression. This emotional whiplash is confusing and draining for you, but for her, it's a last-ditch effort to keep you engaged. Even if the engagement is negative, arguments, fights, or dramatic confrontations, it's still attention, and to her, that feels better than silence. Underneath all the anger lies a deep sense of betrayal. In her mind, you didn't just lose interest, you broke an unspoken promise. Even if you never explicitly committed to certain things, she built expectations based on your past behavior. When those expectations weren't met, she felt deceived. That's why her anger can be so disproportionate to the actual situation. It's not just about what you did or didn't do. It's about what she believed you represented in her life. Interestingly, some women will try to hide their anger at first, especially if they still hope to pull you back in. They may act composed and detached, pretending they don't care. But this facade rarely lasts. Eventually, the suppressed resentment erupts, sometimes in explosive confrontations that catch you off guard. This delayed anger can be even more dangerous because it's been building quietly over time. As her anger grows, it often becomes self-destructive as well. She might engage in reckless behaviors, partying excessively, jumping into rebound relationships, or making impulsive decisions, all as a way to cope with the pain of rejection. These actions are her way of saying, I don't need you, even though deep down she's still deeply affected by your withdrawal. This stage is where the relationship dynamic often reaches its most toxic point. Your detachment and her escalating anger create a cycle of conflict that's difficult to escape. Every interaction becomes charged with emotion, and rational communication becomes nearly impossible. At its core, this anger is a defense mechanism. It protects her from the unbearable vulnerability of admitting that she's hurt and afraid. By focusing on blame and retaliation, she avoids confronting the deeper truth that no amount of anger or manipulation can force someone to feel something they no longer feel. After the storm of emotions, the shock, confusion, manipulation, and anger, there comes a point where she begins to run out of energy. No matter how fiercely someone fights to control a situation, there's only so long they can sustain the emotional intensity required to keep it going. This is where the final stage emerges, acceptance or detachment. At this point, she has no choice but to confront reality, whether gracefully or with quiet resentment. It's important to understand that acceptance doesn't always mean peace. In many cases, this stage is less about truly coming to terms with the end of your interest and more about self-preservation. She realizes that her efforts are no longer working. You're not responding to her affection, guilt, tripping, or even her anger the way you once did. That realization is painful, but it also forces her to shift her strategy entirely. For some women, this shift manifests as true acceptance. She finally understands that she cannot force you to feel something you don't, and she begins to process her emotions in a healthier way. This doesn't mean she stops caring overnight. The hurt is still there, but she starts to redirect her energy toward herself. Instead of chasing you or clinging to what was, she focuses on self-healing. She might spend more time with friends, dive into her career or hobbies, or start working on her emotional growth. This version of acceptance often looks like maturity. She stops reaching out unnecessarily, avoids drama, gradually creates distance. She may even wish you well, though not always openly, while there's still sadness beneath the surface. She recognizes that holding on to a one-sided relationship would only prolong her pain. In this case, her detachment is calm and measured, and over time, she truly moves on. However, there's another form of detachment that's far more complex and guarded. In this version, she doesn't fully heal or process her feelings. She simply shuts them off as a defense mechanism. It's not real acceptance, but rather emotional numbing. She convinces herself that she no longer cares, even if she secretly does. On the outside, she may appear indifferent or even cold. She'll stop asking questions, stop initiating contact, and act as though you never mattered. But deep down, there's still unresolved pain. This type of detachment can be dangerous because it often turns into bitterness or mistrust in future relationships. Instead of learning from the experience, she carries the hurt forward, building walls around herself so that no one can make her feel this vulnerable again. In some cases, this kind of detachment comes with a desire for revenge through indifference. She won't lash out or try to hurt you directly, but she'll take a quiet satisfaction in making you feel as though you never impacted her life. If you see her again, she may act completely unbothered, smiling politely while keeping you at arm's length. This behavior is a way of reclaiming power. By pretending you meant nothing, she feels like she's won, even if it's just an illusion. During this stage, you may also notice a dramatic change in her demeanor. In earlier stages, she was reactive, full of questions, accusations, tears, or attempts to win you back. Now, there's a noticeable stillness. She doesn't chase, she doesn't argue, and she doesn't engage in emotional games. This calmness can be unsettling because it signals that she's no longer fighting for the relationship. For many men, this sudden shift can even create a sense of unease or guilt, especially if they expected her to keep trying. Her silence speaks volumes. It's a clear message that she's accepted the reality of the situation, whether through genuine growth or emotional shutdown. In some ways, this stage can be more powerful than all the previous ones combined. When someone truly lets go, there's nothing left for you to push against. No conflict to navigate. The dynamic simply dissolves, leaving space for both people to move forward separately. One interesting thing about this stage is that it often comes with a rewriting of her own narrative. To protect herself, she may begin to reinterpret the entire relationship. Instead of seeing it as a deep connection, she might convince herself that it wasn't that important after all. She'll downplay the good memories and focus on the flaws, reframing her feelings to make the loss easier to bear. This mental reframing is her way of regaining control over her own story. For you, this final stage can feel strangely anticlimactic. After all the drama and intensity, her sudden calmness might leave you wondering what happened. In truth, this is the natural end of her emotional journey. Whether she's genuinely at peace or simply hiding her pain, she has reached a point where she's no longer willing to invest energy into someone who isn't equally invested in her. What's most significant about this stage is that it represents a turning point for both of you. For her, it's an opportunity to rebuild her sense of self with or without genuine healing. For you, it's a moment to reflect on the entire process and understand how your actions and her reactions shape the dynamic. While the earlier stages were filled with chaos, this final phase is marked by quiet clarity. There are no more frantic texts, no more emotional confrontations, no more guilt-laden conversations, just distance, space, a recognition that what once was has come to an end. And though she may never say it out loud, this stage is her way of silently declaring, I understand now, and I'm done. It is in this stillness, whether fueled by genuine acceptance or silent resentment, that she finally reclaims her independence, leaving behind the struggle to hold on to someone who has already let go.